Hey, there we go. Eric coming at you, just doing some maintenance and some upgrades on the Ram today, and figure I'd do retired master mechanic thoughts number 3 today. What's more exciting than being under a car working on it? So the thought had crossed my mind, having intermittent diagnosis can be a real pain in the ass when transient issues are not presenting themselves very well. And when they're not presenting themselves very well, and arguably one of the most transient issues I ever worked on professionally happened to be for my wife's car. We had a 2006 Dodge Charger RT with road and track package, so it had basically the SRT seats and interior, which was a huge upgrade, and it had self-leveling shocks, blah 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 blah. Well, the car would die intermittently, and it took a while because it wasn't my primary vehicle. There ended up being a recall on the part, and it ended up being the fuel tank, because there were float valves in the fuel tank that would shut off when you topped off the tank. Now what was happening was these valves weren't closing, and it was getting liquid into the evaporative canister, and it was loading that up. And so you'd top off the car, and then within 5 to 8 miles you would stall, whether you'd be on the freeway, pretty much an idle situation. And this was occurring for months, and it was so transient. How you have to have a failure to find a failure. And I had gone through and I had just prophylactically replaced the evap valve under the hood in case that was going out. That was a cheap part. And I had gone over everything, and we had a Star Mobile, which was the factory scan tool for Chrysler at the time. So I had my laptop, and I had the OE tool. So I'm getting all the data, and it just wouldn't present itself. And finally, after months and months and months of trying to chase this problem down, I was going over everything, and the only possible thing it could have been was the fuel tank. And it didn't make any sense at that time. And luckily, I got one of the last fuel tanks in the country before they issued the recall, and I got it. So I was able to replace the tank. I cut the tank apart. I'm going to find some pictures so I can show you what the valves looked like. And I ended up getting a letter, and Dodge at the time, this was before, but this is in the Daimler Chrysler era, and they were doing a reimbursement. Well, I was working at the shop. I bought the part and I installed it myself. So I sent them an invoice, and I sent them, hey, I'm ASE master mechanic. I bought the tank. Here's the shop receipt, and I would like the flat rate at my hourly rate, my net rate. And they denied that claim. They said they were only going to fulfill the part, and if I had taken it to a shop, they would have paid it. And I'm like, I am the shop, and I did it. There was a back and forth, whatever, but it was one of those things that we had customers all the time that generally people have routines, unless you're like a commercial business using your vehicle. Most folks have a pretty routine schedule on where they go, when they go, how they drive the car, stops they make, and whatnot. So we like to try to like diagnose where it is in that loop and figure out, track back from there. And I had driven cars. There was a real fluke. We had a dozen GM front wheel drive torque converters locking up, and the cars would get towed in, car would drive fine, and finally one customer just said, you just got to drive the car. So I put maybe 30 miles on it, and I was about a half mile from the shop, and the torque converter thunk locked up. I was coming to a red light, and the car would not stop. And there wasn't anyone there. I was able to slow down and get it back to the shop. But, you know, intermittents suck. And that's why when I was having the issue with the suspension on the truck, it wouldn't act up in the driveway. It would only act up driving. So it was a real bitch to try to chase that down. And yeah, I'm just doing some maintenance. I am way overdue on fluids. I did the trans service 10,000 miles ago, and I've been sitting on all the fluids for the transfer case and front and rear diffs. And so I just put a Thurin truss on the front of this. That's going to be another video. But just some thoughts. Have you had intermittent issues? What was the problem? What was the most intermittent? What was the craziest thing? I think on that Dodge, to have to replace a fuel tank, and I think that was over $600 my cost for that. You know, just a weird design, and a material fluke. You know, they were blaming it on some fuel additive out here in California, but they ended up they did a recall. I did file a complaint with NTSB because my wife had almost been hit multiple times from the car stalling out. And you know, all in all, that was a mostly reliable car. I mean, other than the engine and the body, it was all German. You know, it was all E500 stuff. You know, it had the ZF transmission, all the suspension. It was a great car once I got the carbon ceramic brake pads. That thing chewed through pads. I had every EBC. I was going through shit left and right, and then finally got that sorted. So just thought for today, I don't miss that smell of gear oil. And yeah, y'all, comment, like, subscribe, hit me up, let me know. See you on the next one.